Hey guys, Dahbadu here. I know I'm a little late to the party, but I decided to come out with a build video for Path of Exile 2 for this new league. This is actually a character I built last league. It was a very powerful character. It's actually arguably stronger than my Invoker Monk, which is also very strong. And the Invoker Monk that I was running last league actually is still quite strong and not nerfed as much as a lot of Invoker Monks. So I'll come out with a new build video on that. All of this is reflected in my Mobalytics Guide, which I'll have linked to this video. I also have an updated loot filter for PoE2 for this monk build, and it should serve you guys well. And that's also linked as well. And I might create another video on how to use that loot filter. So let's talk about this build, why I think it's a great starter, why I think that the Chayula monk is arguably not the worst Ascendancy in the game. In fact, it might be one of the strongest Ascendancies in the game, at least as a starter. So let's go over everything. So why is this build good? Why is this such a great starter character? Well, the first thing is that it uses a bunch of unique items that aren't that expensive, and you get them relatively soon in the course of the character. Like by level 15 or 16, you can have like some really key items equipped for this character, and that will power the build and put it on steroids for the entire campaign and beyond. So the unique items that this build incorporates are Ghost Wraith. Now this is the pre-nerf version of Ghost Wraith, so if you're using Ghost Wraith, the new version, you'll probably have like 2300 energy shield instead of 3300. I'm just guessing, I'm not sure. But of note, you can always just use hybrid body armor and a hybrid helmet. But if you're going with the Ghost Wraith, and again, the benefits to this is just with one item plus this Ascendancy, it will completely cap your chaos resistance. Okay, so you don't have to worry about fitting in chaos resistance anywhere else in the build. Just this one item plus that Ascendancy, you're overcapped in chaos resistance. You will need a good roll of chaos resistance on the Ghost Wraith. In terms of the corruption that you would probably want in the Ghost Wraith, I would suggest another rune socket, or just basically increase stats of the item. So instead of 25 maximum life converted energy shield, like 30% maximum life converted energy shield, that sort of thing. That's what I would suggest. Now, so use the Ghost Wraith plus this Ascendancy, and now you're basically capped in chaos resistance, and you have a bunch of energy shield going through the campaign. Okay, so that's the first one. The next unique item that you'll be implementing are Wake of Destruction. These boots, these fly kicks. These boots are pretty strong. People think they suck, and they are a bit slow, which is annoying. However, they're very, very strong when you use them in conjunction with Siphoning Strike. And this is the kind of main attack skill that this build will be using. And it's a beast. And I'll talk about that in a moment, and why this is a very undervalued skill by the community and why it's stronger than people realize. But let's go back to the uniques here. So again, why this is cool is because you can basically put these kicks on at level 16 during the campaign, and you're going to be using them through the entire course of this character because they're required for the tech. Okay? The other unique items that you'll be using is a Call of the Brotherhood ring. In the first iteration of this build last season, or last league, I did not use the Porcupine ring. I'm just going to call it a Porcupine ring. I just used the Call of the Brotherhood, and I used an unset. However, due to the nerfs of the Heralds, Herald of Ice and Herald of Thunder, I basically put the Porcupine ring in to still kind of maintain those really nice pack explosions and relatively like chain herald explosions. You still blow up a lot of stuff when you put this Porcupine ring on. So you use the Call of the Brotherhood to convert all of your lightning damage over to cold. Okay, and then you use this to make your heralds and things freeze and blow up stuff more. So that's the concept behind these uniques, how they kind of work, and these are all things you can get earlier on in the game, and they're usually not that expensive. Now, if you're using the Ghost Wraith version of this build and you haven't switched to like hybrid evasion and energy shield body armor, what you're probably going to want to do is get a pure evasion hat, like a trapper hood, and you're probably going to try to get a pure evasion bracers, like barb bracers, although it's kind of finicky. But of note, you don't have to use a Ghost Wraith. You can just use straight up rare equipment, and with the Ghost Wraith being nerfed, just using rare equipment actually might be better. Okay, but that's what you're looking at for the uniques. So let's talk about the interactions and how this build plays. And of note, I will have some gameplay footage at the end of me talking for hopefully not longer than 20 minutes. But this gameplay footage will show how this build plays out. And again, check out the Mobalytics Guide for more information as well. But basically how it works is you charge around the screen. Like this Siphoning Strike is really good. First of all, let's go back to the skills here. So why am I using Siphoning Strike? Why is it cool? Well, first of all, Siphoning Strike is a lightning skill, okay? But it does physical damage. It does base physical damage, okay? Now I do have cold infusion on here, so I do some cold damage with the non-upgraded version of Siphoning Strike. So just, smacking things with my staff, and again, the strike range on Siphoning Strike by itself is 6+ meters, and then it just charges around the screen. It's an instant gap closer too. So it's not like Flicker Strike where you have to go like this, whoop, boom. It's just like boom, 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 boom. And you can just tap people really strong, tap people really fast, has a pretty high attack damage multiplier on there, and it also stuns innately. And so just smacking people with this by itself will eventually freeze them and stun them and possibly daze them and other things like that. But Siphoning Strike is your main workhorse skill. You use it to jump around the screen. The problem with these Wake of Destruction boots is they're kind of slow. Well, that slowness of your character walking around is made up for, kind of, by Siphoning Strike, because you just instant gap close. Like, let's say that Doriani's a monster. I just click on Doriani. My Siphoning Strike will have me jump all the way to Doriani. Okay? And it's not, again, like a slow wind up like Flicker Strike. So, and again, I'll have all of these gems reflected in the Mobalytics Guides. So if you don't know like all the supports that I'm using, you can just look there, okay? But Siphoning Strike is your main skill. Use it to move around the screen. Now let's talk more about the tech. So the thing about Siphoning Strike is a lightning skill, but it does only physical damage. But why is that good for the Chayula monk? Well, because the Chayula monk has, drumroll, Mana Leech, which basically leeches your mana, so you don't have to worry about mana problems. One of the issues in Path of Exile 2 is that, a lot of your skills require a lot of mana, and people usually have to invest in a bunch of mana, affixes on items like flat mana. They're usually getting like, conservative casting up here, things like that. Well, with the Chayula monk, you don't have to itemize for mana at all, because you basically have unlimited mana as long as you have some Mana Leech. You can get it on your staff, you can get it on your gloves, you can also get it on rings as well. Ideally, I'd probably want to get Mana Leech instead of increased stun duration on here on the staff, but this is fine as well. Again, because this build does stun. So, but let's go back to the Wake of Destruction and Siphoning Strike. So the thing about Wake of Destruction is that you leave shock round, okay? And Siphoning Strike, again, it does physical damage, it's a lightning skill, but it can't shock monsters. However, if you hit a monster who is shocked with Siphoning Strike, you then create a giant lightning nova, okay? But again, the skill can't shock, right? Even with this giant lightning nova. Of note, this lightning nova is fully converted over to cold damage through Call of the Brotherhood, and this skill can, of course, freeze. So the skill can't shock. I'm not shocking with this skill, but I'm freezing pretty heavily with this skill, and I'm stunning with this skill. And I shock monsters mainly through these boots. So when I walk around, and if a monster walks on my little shock ground here, the monster is then shocked. And when I hit him with Siphoning Strike, I'll not only hit him with the physical attack, which hits pretty hard, but then I will do a lightning nova around that monster, double hitting it. That lightning nova is actually a cold nova because it does cold damage, freezes the monster, and best of all, you get endurance charges. So when you get endurance charges, you get to, through charge infusion, increase your defenses by 16% more defenses while you have an endurance charge, okay? And I believe that's per endurance charge, so it goes up quite significantly. And once you have full endurance charges, like your energy, like my energy shield would be, close to 4,500 or something like that, which is really nice. And that's defenses, so it also increases your evasion as well. So, for example, my base evasion without any defensive more buffs from the charge infusion spirit skill, without it, without any endurance charges on my character, this is just its base right now. But when I have, 3 endurance charges, this will say 80% or something like that with a chance to evade. So this will go to like 4,500 and this will go to like 80% or more. So it's pretty effective with that charge infusion, and you get that from those endurance charges. And you get endurance charges because Siphoning Strike usually creates, I believe, power charges. And those power charges, when you hit a monster that's shocked, and those power charges are then converted to endurance charges through resonance. Okay? So basically, that charge infusion is a way to get a bunch of more defenses, okay, both energy shield and evasion. And you can build up endurance charges with your Siphoning Strike. And also, you're using resonance because you're freezing monsters a bunch. And whenever you freeze monsters, you get power charges. And this build also, it implements power charges. And those power charges will increase your critical chance by a more multiplier, right? So, charge infusion, right? Let's more critical hit chance while you have a power charge. They might have nerfed this a little bit. I don't know if, let's see, more defenses so it doesn't look like it stacks multiple times, but it's still quite strong, right? Like 19%, 16 more. I'll have to test this more to see. But anyways, what happens is like this build already has a pretty high chance to crit, okay? Of note, these sinister stabs, they used to be called the Gothic quarterstabs. These have a higher base crit chance than the other quarterstaff types. I like them. Sometimes you can get them at a discount because people don't realize that these are pretty good. And their DPS on paper when doing the trade site doesn't look as high because it's what's good about this staff is its crit chance, and that's not usually factored into most searches people do when looking for DPS and quarterstaff. So anyways, Sinister Staff is probably the recommended base, but you can play around with different bases. It doesn't really matter that much. But my point is that that's a pretty high base crit chance already. So right, I'm 55% right now. Right? And then if I get charge infusion on top of that, that'll go up to like 70% or something. It's pretty good. Now, you can say, oh, but you're not you're the shitty monk. You're not the cool invoker monk that gets to ignore enemy resistances. Well, you kind of do actually still get to ignore enemy resistances with this build. So how do you do that? Well, up here, okay, because this build basically freezes monsters all the time. And when monsters are frozen, A, you'll do more damage to them with thin ice, but B, you'll also get to ignore their elemental resistances, similar to ignoring elemental resistances as an invoker monk. So you still get that baked into the character, that quality of life from ignoring resistances. And you're leeching because you're doing physical damage with Siphoning Strike, but the monsters are also shocked because of your boots. And so you're also doing the cold novas on top of that, so you're also freezing monsters even more. But again, you get that leech because you're doing that physical damage. And they changed the leech mechanics on this as well, and it might even be better now than it was before. So before it was instant leech for energy shield, but they changed it so basically if you have a source of physical attack damage leeched as mana, basically it doesn't just leech off the physical attack damage that you do, it leeches off all of the damage that you do, meaning all the elemental damage you do as well. So that's quite powerful, because like if you look at Siphoning Strike, like the base version of it, I do mostly physical damage, but there's some cold damage in there as well. But because the change to Monk, I get the benefit of that cold damage, and I can leech from that as well, and the change to the Chayula Monk. And of course, you have your shockwave that hits pretty hard with cold damage. Now, something else that is, this might not seem like a lot, but if you watch the gameplay footage, you'll realize it hits very, very hard. And I have, support gems on here that don't increase this tooltip damage, so it might look less than it actually is. But like close combat, that isn't reflected. Its DPS isn't reflected here. Some of this stuff, the DPS isn't reflected here. Okay, so that's the concept behind the build. Just to recap, It just uses cheap unique items, relatively cheap unique items, and get out. It's strong by level 16, has all the tech kind of incorporated into it. Siphoning Strike is a lower level skill, so you can also get it around level 16 as well. And once you pair Siphoning Strike with these boots, it's basically gravy. You know, you can just kind of walk through most of the campaign. Now, something that people need to kind of realize is there is a little strategy involved. Sometimes you want to walk back, let the guys walk over your shock round, and then charge in and like blow them up, okay? And sometimes you don't want the monster shocked, because when the monster isn't shocked, your attack animation is actually a lot faster. When the monster is shocked, you kind of have an additional wind up with the attack animation, and that can cause some problems. I'm just going to cover the skills right now. Again, it will be in the Mobalytics Guide, but you're using Wind Dancer, Combat Frenzy, Herald of Thunder, Charge Infusion, and Herald of Ice. These are your spirit skills. Running these spirit skills, takes, I believe, it's 150 spirit, so you won't be able to fit in all of these spirit skills until you get 150 spirit. Of note, by just getting this, getting 50 spirit on your amulet, that should be enough to satisfy that requirement, along with getting the quests throughout the campaign that increase your maximum spirit. Again, Siphoning Strike is going to be your workhorse skill. You're going to get that relatively early in the campaign. Storm Wave is another nice skill to use, mainly just because sometimes, let's say Doriani is a big scary monster, and he's like, let's say he's standing on a bunch of like chaos pools and things ready to blow up in my face, a bunch of undeath effects. I probably don't want him to like charge in and hit him, right? So maybe he's over there and I can just shoot him with this. And it's nice to have a poker skill on this build. Now, I did have tech prior last patch where I was using Tempest Bell, plus I was just casting Eye of Winter with Unleash. So I had shot out like 2 Eyes of Winters. That was enough to pop the bell. But the issue is I don't have enough skills to fit in this build anymore to do that, because I'm running the Porcupine Ring right now. So basically, you don't get that super burst anymore on bosses, but it doesn't matter because this build hits so hard anyways. So you can't really drop the Tempest Bell and then shoot the Eye of Winter and then pop. But you can still drop the Tempest Bell and smack with a very powerful hit, along with smack with more powerful hits. And that's enough to blow up the Tempest Bell, and that's your burst damage right there. So that's still quite good. Let's go back to skills. So Storm Wave, that's kind of your poker skill. Charge Staff, you will be using Charge Staff. You're mainly using this for, you get essentially an extra attack. And also Charge Staff is really nice with the +6 melee range on Siphoning Strike. You'll just see you're tapping guys like over here. It's great. And in terms of the supports on this, it's more of like supports to basically make your character tankier, give quality of life. So I got blind. So enemies, when they're blinded, they have problems hitting you, and that's really good with your evasion. They're maimed, so they're a little bit slower. I also get to call enemies. It's basically a calling source as well. And I have more skill effect duration, just so this thing lasts longer and I don't have to use it all the time. And you're still using Tempest Bell. It's still fine. It's still okay. It only takes 4 combos to get out, and it's still quite useful for this build. The only really change I made is I put Ambrosia into this Tempest Bell, because you don't really have to worry about mana with this build because you're leeching mana all the time. So you really don't use your mana flask very often as well, at all. And so Ambrosia is really nice on that Tempest Bell. Remember, all of that lightning damage is also getting converted to cold, and by the Call of the Brotherhood. So this build is still very, very effective at freezing monsters, okay? So those are the skills. The items, like I said, you have Ghost Wraith. You're not using Ghost Wraith. You can just use Hybrid Evasion Energy Shield Body Armor. Using a Heavy Belt, I think increased stun threshold is probably the best for the belts. Getting stunned sucks, and also getting frozen sucks. And those are the charms I use as well, and those are the charms I would recommend. Also, get some resistances and stuff like that. For the flasks, I think increased amount recovered is the best prefix, and the suffix, I think reduced charges per use is usually the best one. And guard and increased charges or reduced charges per use, I would recommend for your charms. If you're using Ghost Wraith, you want probably Pure Evasion Trapper Hood, pure evasion bracers. And this is the staff I already talked about, using a Sinister Staff just to have a higher base crit chance. And crit is nice on this build because A, you'll freeze monsters more. B, with the high base crit chance, which I think I'm 55 right now, and you multiply it by the more multiplier here, you see like 70-ish% chance to crit. It's very nice. So that's the equipment. Let's talk about the skill pathing. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to just start out here and go like up through here, okay? Then you're going to grab this stuff right here. You can grab this, grab all of this, grab all of this, come up here. Don't get the crit stuff first. Coming over here to get this is very, very nice. You can also get this as well. You come up here, you can grab this stuff if you want. I believe this gives a little bit of strength, so that'll give you some extra stats, which is nice. Then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to come up here, okay? You can buy this stuff here if you want, just because it gives you some stats and it gives you some chance to crit. Chance to crit at this point in the campaign won't be very noticeable, but these stats will help. So that's just, it's still useful. Also, by buying this stuff right here, you start to crit more often, and therefore you can essentially proc the, if you've crit recently, you do 20% more damage. That affects all the damage that you do. So it's very nice. Then I get Resonance, and by that time you should probably get Combat Frenzy as a skill. Like, you probably have enough levels to get Combat Frenzy on here, and you're going to want to use that as a skill. And again, you're freezing monsters a lot, so you're getting Frenzy charges, but those with Resonance are being converted over to Power charges. And the Power charges are getting used up by your Charge Infusion. And when they get used up by your Charge Infusion, that increases your chance to crit. So I come up here, and I get the attack speed probably, and then I get this, Inner Faith. You come over here, and probably go up here as well. Now these points right here you can buy as kind of like temporary points. And there's also points down here you can get as well for temporary points. So what I would suggest doing is, how I kind of hop around the passive tree is, I only really buy the connective nodes when I like the dexterity, the intelligence, the attribute nodes traveling elsewhere, when I've saved up enough points to fully make the trip to where I want to go to get a notable. So for example, instead of like spending a point here, spending a point here, spending a point here, and just having these attributes while just playing through the campaign, what I'll do is I'll spend these points like right here to get the Hybrid Evasion Energy Shield, or these points right here, and I'd save up, like I'd bank 5 or 6 points, and then what I'd do is I just buy all these up, okay? So that's kind of how I travel around. I don't do the pathing unless I've saved up enough points to rush to a notable that I want along that path, okay? And I save up or bank those points by putting them into, nice little passive skills like this, okay? And there's a lot in the monk area, okay? There's a lot of these in the monk area. And then I would probably go up here, like I said, and then come down here and then grab this stuff. You're going to probably want Falcon Technique on this build. This is the anointment that you're using. I think this is a good anointment. It's especially with Siphoning Strike. High Alert is also something you can use as an anointment. It's very, very cheap. So I'd actually recommend you use High Alert as your anointment on your amulet until you get an amulet that's worth more than Anointing First Approach. Of note, First Approach isn't that expensive, but it's way cheaper as anointment compared to Falcon Technique. But anyways, getting Falcon Technique eventually would be nice for this build because having a high attack speed with Siphoning Strike is really nice. Now, this is something else that you'll be doing with this build, is you'll be getting this wheel right here. Because you're leeching mana, this mana leech stuff is nice, and of course the other stuff here is useful as well. So in terms of Ascendancies, this is what I would suggest. I would get probably Chayula's Gift first. By that point in time, you should probably have a Ghost Wraith during the campaign, and these two things combined will basically cap your Chaos Resistance. And that's kind of a nice quality of life to get as your first Ascendancy through the campaign, so you don't have to really worry about that stuff. And this is a very strong item in the campaign. It gives you a lot of energy shield, and your life flasks are also great with this energy shield pool because you're also using Eternal Youth. And so if I were just to quaff a life flask, it would heal my energy shield almost 2,000 points, which is pretty nice. So that's the first Ascendancy I would get, Chayula's Gift. This could be your second Ascendancy, Reality Rending. Now, people say, oh, the Invoker Monk has all these extra, damage buffs on it. It does, and that's quite nice. Well, this, the Chayula Monk also has a nice damage buff. That's, that works out. I'll just say it works out to like a 23%-ish more damage or 20% more damage. Let's just say that, okay? And that's chaos damage. I don't think monsters have chaos resistance in this game. I could be wrong, but whatever. It's a way to get extra damage. This damage is not calculated in any of your tooltips, by the way, but it's basically an Ascendancy that gives you extra damage, so why not use it, okay? And then the last two Ascendancies you're going to get is you're going to travel over here. This way you can use the Mana Leech tech and the Energy Leech tech. You could also, Mana Leech is kind of nice, so you don't have to worry about prioritizing mana, so maybe you can actually get this second instead. So scratch what I said, get this first, get this second, and then you can get whatever you want, this or this after that. It's up to you. Yeah, so I think that's it. I'm going to cover loot filters next. I have a loot filter for this build, and I'll show you how to install it, okay? All right, guys, let's talk about how to use my loot filter. So although I was late coming out with the build video, at least I have a loot filter with it, right? So hopefully that makes up for it. So what do you want to do? How do you use a loot filter? Why is it important? Well, if you're playing Path of Exile, tons of loot is dropped. A lot of it is trash, and a lot of it is not applicable for your character. So basically what I did is I took Neversink's Uber Strict filter for the new Dawn of Hunt League, and I modified their Uber Strict and Very Strict filters that he created to basically hide a bunch of stuff that you don't want to see, but see the monk stuff that you want to see late game. So that's the modifications that I made to his filters, okay? Let me just show you what I did so you can kind of modify your own if you want. So before modifying your own filters, I would suggest going to File Explorer Options. So type this out in a Windows search, it'll come up here, then you go to View. You can show hidden files and folders, that's always nice. But very, very importantly, uncheck Hide Extensions for Known File Types. Uncheck that. This way, you can tell what a filter file is versus a text file. Filter files are text files, TXT files, except the extension is .filter at the end, okay? And of note, you can, of course, edit them with text editors, such as Notepad++ and Visual Studio Code. I'd recommend downloading and installing these two free apps because they are better than the basic text edit option in Windows. So let's just take a look here. I'm going to edit with Notepad++ or ++. Now, if you look, this is what I added. So I just took, this is his Uber Strict filter that I just downloaded today, and all I did is I just added this section manually to show the bases, the high-level bases of quarterstaffs and armor that I want to see as a monk. I also get to see basically all rings and amulets and all heavy belts, okay? Because those are also useful for this build, and I don't want to see them hidden, and you can chance them, and you can you can do crafting with those as well. So that's the difference between the basic filter blade Uber Strict versus Dahbadu's version. You see a little bit more things, and things that you see are for your monk, so you can find your own items and craft your own items. You don't always have to buy everything off trade. So that's what you're looking at there. Now, if you want to get your own filter from Filter Blade, as opposed to downloading my filter files, which are linked in the video description and YouTube comments, I'll just have them on my Google Drive on my small channel. So that's one of the benefits to that. But if you want to get your own, what you want to do is you want to go to filterblade.xyz. Once you're there, if you're playing Path of Exile 2, you want to select Path of Exile 2 up here. It will load this. It'll say Dawn of Hunt Update is live. Then what you want to do is you want to click on Create New Filter. This does not matter because you're going to download all the filter levels. But if you pick one, I would just suggest Uber Strict. That's my favorite. So then what you're going to do after you come to this page and it loads this up is you just go to Export to PoE. You're going to type out a name filter here. I'll just type out Filter Blade. You can type out a description, Filter Blade. Okay? And then you're going to click on where it says Sync or Download. And then what you're going to do is you're not going to click these buttons up here. I like to just download the files and copy paste them because I'm an old man. But you can sync them to your can and do fancier stuff. But I'm just showing you kind of the basic mechanics ways to do this for yourself. So then what you would do is you click on Get All Strictnesses. It's downloading all of these .filter files into a zip file. As you can see, I've done this multiple times today. Here, let's see, close this. No, I don't want to. WinRAR, go away. As you can see, I've downloaded this multiple times. Then what you're going to do is you're just going to copy and paste the filter blade zip file into this path right here. So it would be your username in Windows, Documents, My Games, Path of Exile 2. You just place the zip file here and you'd extract it. That'll create all of these filter files. Now, the ones that I did edit and I'll have for download as well is the Very Strict and the Uber Strict. And you can see the edits that I make by just right-clicking them and then going to Edit with Notepad++ or whatever the text editor you have installed. And this is what I added at the top, okay? And so once you place that filter file in this directory and you load Path of Exile, and then within the options for Path of Exile, there's a tab that you would just select one of the filters from the drop-down selection box. Just select the one that says, Uber Strict Dahbadu or Very Strict Dahbadu, and you'll basically be using the default filter blade, Very Strict or Uber Strict with my small modifications just to see those high-level monk bases. All right, guys, enjoy the gameplay footage. Hopefully you enjoy this loot filter, and hopefully you enjoy the build. I'll be posting updates on this build along with my other Invoker Monk build, which I already have planned out, and it barely got affected by the patch. In fact, it got buffed by the patch because I was taking my Invoker in a different direction than a lot of the other Invokers were doing because they copied each other. So anyways, enjoy the gameplay footage. Talk with you later. Bye.
stupid dog. You are chasing your own tail.
Surge!
chest I gave. Ain't no one command, I behave. Never put my faith in plans that's laid, and I don't follow rules that you made. I think it's time I set this whole bitch ablaze. On the precipice of slaughter is the Lord. Angels and they demons come together with the cause. And I don't think you really know the meaning of a storm. Let this serve a lesson on the essence of reform. Hatred without focus make the